Jah guide me, Jah bless me, Jah guide me, protect me, Jah guide me, Jah bless, Jah bless, Jah bless, Jah bless, Jah bless.
Jah blessings and greetings one and all. This is Rasta Pastor UK. Who is Antichrist? First of all, a comprehensive study into the enemy of Jah can only make your faith stronger in the Almighty, as it will reveal many things. Out of the darkness must come the light. What is the meaning of the word Antichrist? The Antichrist, anyone, any church, any system who denies, opposes or replaces the real Christ. Antichrist can also refer to the personal opponent of Christ, expected to appear before the end of the world, i.e. the battle between Christ and the Antichrist. Book of Thessalonians, don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. So this verse is speaking of Satan as a man, or the devil when he comes to earth as a man. Barack Obama is the Antichrist as a man. So I've already done a video describing why Barack Obama is the Antichrist. I'm going to do a shorter version with some more descriptions to explain the signs. In this video, I'm going to look at some other people displaying Antichrist behavior. First book of John 2:18. Who is the liar but the one who denies that Jesus is the Christ? This is the Antichrist, the one who denies the Father and the Son. First book of John 4:2-3. Many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who do not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. Any such person is the deceiver and the Antichrist. We also need to understand the true meaning of Jesus Christ's divinity. That is the definition from the Ethiopian Tawahedo Church of Kedemari Haile Selassie. Tawahedo is a Ge'ez word meaning being made one or unified, known as Miaphysitism, the Christological doctrine that holds Yeshua, Jesus Christ, the incarnate word, is fully divine and fully human in one nature. This is in contrast to the two natures of Christ, which is held by the Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and all the other churches except the Oriental Orthodox churches. Okay, so let's break this down. Christ is fully divine and fully human. What does divine mean in the Oxford Dictionary? Coming from or connected with God, or a God. And obviously fully human is a man in the flesh. So therefore fully human and fully divine means a man in the flesh coming from or connected with God. Yahushua died on the cross as a human in the flesh, but yet raised from the dead on the third day. Who is the liar but the one who denies that Jesus is the Christ? This is the Antichrist, the one who denies the Father and the Son. It is Antichrist to deny the flesh of the Christ, or the man Yeshua, the Son, or the man Haile Selassie, the Father. So obviously it is incorrect that Haile Selassie I denied being Christ, because he said he is a man, or in the Bible words, he is in the flesh. Many deceivers have gone out into the world, those who do not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. Any such person is the deceiver and the Antichrist. Okay, so one of these Antichrist deceivers is called Christafari. This is a reggae worship or gospel artist pretending to be Rasta in order to try and convert people to some false Western Christianity. He tries to use the powers of the name Tafari along with the colours red, gold and green in order to take people away from Rastafari. Notice how he uses the red, gold and green flag upside down where the green should be at the top. This is the level of ignorance or disrespect, turning the flag upside down. This is Mark Moore, the lead singer, or aka Christafari. Notice the colour scheme, black and white, in what they're wearing. This reminds me of another artist called Boy George. Look at how he wore red, gold and green in his dreadlocks and sang a song about red, gold and green whilst openly being a homosexual, cross-dressing, wearing makeup. Christafari is a farce, lie, deception. Why? Simply because the name used, Christafari, should actually mean, or as it is read, that Rastafari is Christ. But in actual fact, the name Christafari is being used by Mark Moore to say that Rastafari is not Christ. Even from a Western Christian's point of view, this would be like mixing Christ with Buddha, i.e. Christ Buddha, or Pope, Christ Pope, in order to convert people. So the name Christafari being used to say that Rastafari is not the Christ is trickery, deception, the spirit of the Antichrist, deception through words. Words have meaning, etymology, and Christafari should naturally mean that Tafari is anointed. That is true, or Tafari is Christ, but is being used in a negative way to say that he is not Christ, i.e. using the power of the name Rastafari in a lie. Why use his name, Tafari, and mix it with Christ? Because of the power, the might of the Trinity. That is Rastafari, if you know what his name means, Haile Selassie. So, we have a classic wolf in sheep clothing, as Mark Moore is pretending to be a Rasta, misusing our culture in order to target people attracted to Rastafari truth and culture and lead them astray. He says cannabis is a gateway drug. The truth is cannabis is a medicinal plant and only a misguided spiritual person would consider to take hard drugs.
It started off with marijuana and then escalated to cocaine, eventually to crack, to crystal meth.
You may be familiar with the comedian act Ali G. Mark Moore is very similar to this character.
You're going to send us next week.
New video. well, the next album is Word Sound and Power, and all the music on Word Sound and Power is just 100% reggae music. You know, we've kind of strayed into pop and into hip hop and into this and into that. But you know, the thing that God is really leading us into is authentic reggae to minister to a certain type of people.
Cool.
You know what I mean, and to reach them. And so this next video is going to be as foundational, ragamuffin roots reggae that you can ever get.
Okay, well, when we get it, we'll play it. All right?
Yes,
so bring
for
it
sure,
soon, because
for sure.
Cincinnati's hungry for it, okay? This is Christafari, and you'll come back, right?
Yes, we shall.
Okay, bye.
Yo, this is Dancer back from Christafari, wishing each and every one of you for the joyful noise of very, very merry anniversary. 3 years, over 100 shows. Keep on trotting forward for Christ. We love you. Joyful noise.
All right. Hi, you're watching Joyful Noise, and I'm here with Tanzabak from Christafari, also known as Mark Moore.
I had this booklet called Rastafari and the Bible. And I just want to say I love and respect all Rastafarians out there, but if you're going to follow Haile Selassie, you should read his autobiography. He was a Christian. He was a friend of Billy Graham.
He denied being Christ. He said no man should assume or pretend that a human being is emanated from a deity. I'm a mortal man, so he denied being Christ.
I'm a mortal man, so he denied being Christ.
Okay, so here we have a perfect example of Antichrist talk with the so-called Christafari gospel singer denying the mortal man or the flesh in regards to Christ. So Mark Moore, during this interview, tries to say that Haile Selassie I denies being Christ because of being fully human or in the flesh. This is Antichrist mentality according to the Bible. He also takes the emperor's words out of context, as the emperor was actually responding to a question on reincarnation, which is an Antichrist concept itself. Okay, so now we're going to analyze this famous clip where people say that Haile Selassie I denied being Christ. First, let's listen to the question.
Millions of Christians throughout the world, Your Imperial Majesty, will regard you as the reincarnation of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so the question was about reincarnation. So, what religion believes in reincarnation? Reincarnation is a mainstream teaching in Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Therefore, reincarnation is not part of the Tawahid of faith, and Haile Selassie gives a warning in his reply.
I had heard of that idea. I also met certain Rastafarians. I told them clearly that I am a man, that I am mortal, and that I will be replaced by the oncoming generation, and that they should never make a mistake in assuming or pretending that the human being is emanated from a deity.
So, responding to the question about reincarnation, he goes on to warn certain Rastafarians, not all Rastafarians, but certain ones. Nowhere does he deny being Christ. He just gives a warning about emanation philosophy, which is reincarnation. Haile Selassie I, saying that he is a man and mortal in the flesh, does not disqualify him from being the Christ, but actually qualifies him to be the Christ according to the Bible and the definition of Christ from the Tawahido Church. So to use this conversation and clip to say that Haile Selassie denied being Christ is a lie, a mistake, or just pure ignorance.
He denied being Christ. He said no man should assume or pretend that a human being is emanated from a deity. I'm a mortal man, which means that he will die, and he did. And by the way, you can visit his grave in Ethiopia.
Okay, so he tries to confirm that Haile Selassie is dead without even a body being found. You know, obviously I've got a whole video on that, if you check out on my channel, on that subject about Haile Selassie being still alive.
And one of my favorite quotes of his is, "Let us labor to lead our sisters and brothers to our Savior, Jesus Christ." So he denied being Christ.
Of course, the Father, Haile Selassie, is going to tell us that our Saviour is Jesus Christ. This does not mean that Haile Selassie is denying being Christ. Haile Selassie is Christ Father, and Yeshua or Jesus is Christ the Son. Psalm 27 of David, verse 8. My heart says of you, seek his face, your face, Lord, I will seek. Psalm of David 87:5. And of Zion it will be said, this one and that one were born in her, and the Most High himself shall establish her. Okay, so here in the Bible, the book of Psalms, the Psalms of David, don't forget Haile Selassie was crowned on the throne of King David. So this verse confirms that there are two parts of the Trinity to be born on earth, this one and that one. First the Son and then the Father, both born in Zion or in Ethiopia. And the third or first part of the Trinity, the Holy Spirit, Melchizedek, King of righteousness, King of peace, has no father or no mother and is eternal. These three, the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit, make up the Holy Trinity. And here is a picture from Ethiopia showing the three holy men of the Ethiopian Holy Trinity. This is the true way how God manifests himself. 3 in 1 and 1 in 3. Okay, let's talk about another deceiver or Antichrist, and that's Mutabaruka. He's a fake Rasta from Jamaica. Alan Hope, born 1952, better known as Mutabaruka, He's known as a Jamaican Rastafari dub poet, musician, actor, educator and talk show host who has developed two of Jamaica's most popular radio programs, The Cutting Edge and Stepping Razor. Mutabaruka says he is anti-Bible and obviously therefore anti-Christ. Mutabaruka says that he does not follow the teachings or faith of Rastafari, Haile Selassie I, or the Bible. He admits that he only uses the name Rasta to define himself because Rastafari was a powerful king, once again using the power of the name of His Majesty without honouring it with his truth, but to bring forth a lie, teaching all that opposes the Bible. This is Antichrist behaviour, another wolf in sheep clothing. Muta totally opposes Rastafari by trying to teach white people can't be Rasta. This goes against the teachings of His Majesty, as the colour of a man's skin should be of no more significance than the colour of his eyes. Muta claims that the Bible and Christianity is from Rome and made to enslave black people, when in truth one of the oldest versions of the Bible comes from Ethiopia. Muta is always fighting against Jah of the Bible, trying to put doubts into people's minds. A lot of people will be fooled by this man because he's a black Jamaican claiming to be a Ras, but in reality he is what the Bible calls a wolf in sheep clothing. Matthew 7:15. Watch out for false prophets. They will come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. How can a man represent Rastafari but yet fight against the basic principles of Rastafari?
You really believe that this planet is 6,000 years old? 6,000. How did I come about that number? According to the Bible, from Adam to Noah is 2,000 years. From Noah to Jesus is 2,000 years. And from Jesus to Noah is 2,000. That's 6,000 odd years that. You really believe that?
This is an example of how Muta tries to doubt the Bible and call it a lie. Muta wants us to believe that the earth is millions of years old in order to support his evolution theory.
You have a philosophy. I know I can't hold a philosophy. Because I like you, I like your philosophy. A whole heap of ways. And
I'm not reason in love, man.
Me hear you have one planet where I say, see the Peter Tosh thing there on TV there, yeah? Where I say about life after death.
Yeah, reincarnation.
Yeah.
Well, the whole purpose of reincarnation is evolving, and we passed the animal stage already. But what I've read is that you have different stages of animals, different stage. You see, when well, that's going to get into some whole heap of thing with evolution, but
no, brother, what's wrong with evolution? Nothing wrong with evolution. What is it that is allowing you and causing you to believe that? You know what it is? Because them put a book in front of you and say, from it in the Bible, you can't contradict it, even if the logics don't show it, even if knowledge don't show it, even if your spirit in yourself don't feel that.
If you don't have the spirit of Jah, then you have the spirit of the Antichrist. Evolution theorists need the earth to be millions of years old in order for enough time for an ant to turn into a human, for example. We are constantly told in books, online, TV, etc. that the earth is millions of years old. This is evil, satanic, Freemasonic propaganda controlling the mindset of the masses. Now, I'm not a racist, and I know the truth can be spoken by any so-called race, so let's have a listen to a creation scientist talk some truth about the age of the earth. There is actually no proof to say the earth is millions of years old, but more proof to say it is 6,000 years old. Most people are already brainwashed into thinking the earth is millions of years old. Take a listen to this creation scientist teaching children. It is so easy to understand. So let us listen, take some time out, educate ourselves, and get some basic logic and knowledge like Muta suggests.
The third thing he said to Eve is what I want to talk to you about tonight. He said, Eve, if you eat off that tree, ye shall be as gods. And right there is where the whole idea of evolution got started. It didn't start with Charlie Darwin. It started with Satan in the Garden of Eden. He wants you to think you can become a god. Satan's a liar. He said, you can be like God. Lucifer's the one who wants to be God. Lucifer said, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. See, Satan wants to be God, but the job's not available, so he's all upset about that, and he can't be God. So he lied to Eve and told her she could be like God.
This is very important to understanding. Satan wants you to believe that you can be like God in order to sin against Jah. After all, Satan just wants to take as many souls as he can to hell with him. He is a liar and a deceiver and has many people under his spell. Now let us listen to this creation scientist give us some facts to prove a young earth.
We like science. We're not against science. But I'm against poison mixed in with the science. That's all. Here's a first grade textbook. I'll show you what I'm talking about. They tell the kids in first grade, Earth has changed much since its formation 4.5 billion years ago. Now just hold on a minute. Is the Earth 4.5 billion years old? No, as we'll see in a minute. The Sahara Desert has what's called a prevailing wind pattern. The wind almost always blows the same way. This creates a serious problem. The hot air comes off the desert, kills the trees next door, and that area becomes desert. The process is called desertification. You can read about it in an earth science book. Sahara Desert has been studied very carefully. They did a long study on this and said, you know what, folks, the Sahara Desert is probably about 4,000 years old. That's when it started growing. Egypt used to be fertile land all over the place. Okay, well then I have a question. If the earth is millions of years old, why don't we have a bigger desert someplace? Why would the biggest desert on the planet be less than 4,000 years old? Well, I have a theory about that. Now here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God created everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. Now it's pretty hard to have a desert under a flood. You got to admit that would be tough, okay? So the desert couldn't start growing until the flood water went down. So I predict, based on the Bible, the biggest desert in the world will be less than 4,400 years old. It is. Wow, maybe the Bible's right. You know, when they drill into the ground, sometimes they hit oil. The oil's under incredible pressure in some places, up to 20,000 pounds per square inch. It'll come squirting up out of the ground like a big zit. 20,000 psi. Well, the guys who study the rocks on top of the oil say, you know, it just can't handle that pressure for more than about 10,000 years. I know the weight of rock supplies pressure, but the pressure in the well is greater than the weight of overburden. They say it should have cracked the rock and leaked off in less than 10,000 years. Okay, well then now I've got two questions. Where did the oil come from? And why is it still under pressure? Well, most scientists agree that oil comes from organisms that are squished. They're changed by heat and pressure into oil. They learned in 1971 how to make oil in 20 minutes in the laboratory. In Australia, they've got a treatment plant that takes sewage sludge and turns it into oil in 30 minutes. There's a factory in Turkey that just opened up, a factory in Texas that takes turkey guts and pressurizes them and heats them and turns them into oil. They said in the article, we duplicated what Mother Nature does, but what Mother Nature took millions of years to do, we do in about 30 minutes. Sinclair has the dinosaur as their logo. They say dinosaurs turn to oil. Yes, boys and girls, they mellowed for 80 million years. I don't think so. I have a theory about the oil. Now, here's my theory, okay? I believe about 6,000 years ago, God created everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood, okay? In that flood, lots of critters and people drowned. They got buried by the gravel and the rocks and the mud and the sand, and it got pretty heavy after a while, and it squished them into oil. So the oil is down there today from the people and animals that drowned in that flood. Which means if you stop and think about that, you drove over here tonight on some of your ancestors. Well, Noah's uncles anyway. Next time you're at the gas station, pumping them in there, you can say, bye, Grandpa. You should have listened to Noah. He told you it's going to rain. I was preaching in Denver one time, and some guys came and they said, Hovind, we know you teach the earth is only 6,000 years old. We'd like to prove to you you're wrong. Would you come with us, please? I said, sure. They took me to this big freezer in Denver, outside of Denver in Lakewood. It's the National Ice Core Laboratory. 36 below zero in there. They put this big suit on me, big hat, big gloves, big boots. I was freezing in 5 seconds when I walked in there. I got Florida blood, you know, it's real thin. They said, Hovind, we go to Greenland and we drill holes through the ice. You know, government job. And we take this big pipe, we drill it down in, and we bring this ice core out of the middle of the pipe, and we save it in this big freezer here in Lakewood, Colorado. We have 10 ice cores stored in this freezer. They said, they took me over and showed me one of the ice cores. They said, you see these rings on here? It looks like tree rings, dark, light, dark, light. I said, oh yeah, it's real clear. They said, well, what happens in the summer, the snow melts a little bit, and then it refreezes and makes clear ice. Shows up dark on the picture. In the winter, the snow just packs. It doesn't get a chance to melt. And so it shows up as a white layer. So these layers represent summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter. They said, now the deepest hole we've ever drilled is 10,000 feet deep. And we counted these ice rings, and there were 135,000 of them. And now you're going around telling everybody the earth is 6,000 years old. We can prove it's at least 135,000. I said, fellas, aren't you assuming those are annual rings? See, they didn't know about the Lost Squadron, apparently. But in World War II, some airplanes ran out of gas and landed in Greenland. Has anybody ever heard of the Lost Squadron? Okay, it's been on TV a bunch of times. Well, the airplanes got left there in 1942. They went on and fought the war. Everybody forgot about them until a rich millionaire from Kentucky got a brilliant idea. Go find those airplanes and bring them home. He went there looking for the airplanes. They had to use ground-penetrating radar to penetrate the ice, and they located the planes. They melted a hole to get down to a P-38. It was 263 feet below the surface. They melted this hole down to get to the plane, took the plane apart, and brought the pieces back up through the hole and put it back together in Middleborough, Kentucky, not too far from here. How far is Middleborough from Knoxville? 2 hours, maybe? Okay. The planes, that's where its home base is, Middleborough. Well, the planes were in the ice for 48 years. They were 263 feet down. That's 5.5 feet a year. Now, the deepest hole they've ever drilled is 10,000 feet. You divide that by 5.5, you get 1,800 years. I know deeper layers get squished, called glacial firn, so really 4,000 years is plenty of time to put all the ice at the North and South Pole. So why isn't there more ice at the North and South Pole? I visited the museum and saw the guy who dug out the airplane. His name is Bob Cardin. I said, Bob, when you went down to get to that airplane, did you go through ice rings? He said, oh yeah, many hundreds of them. I said, now wait a minute. How can there be hundreds of ice rings in 48 years? Shouldn't there be somewhere around 48? He said, who told you those are annual layers? He said, that doesn't represent summer, winter, summer, winter. It represents warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold. You can get 5 of those in 1 week in Knoxville, can't you? Yeah. But here's a guy still calling them annual layers. Now, either he's ignorant or he's lying. I hope he's just ignorant, because ignorance can be fixed. You see, stupid is forever, but ignorance can be fixed. That's the difference, by the way. A guy that works with the Eskimos said, Brother Hovind, I got 15 layers of snow on my car in 8 hours. Not 15 inches, 15 distinct layers of snow. You kids are going to be taught that each of the layers of the earth is a different age. They've got Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archaeozoic. Did you know the whole geologic column is baloney? It doesn't exist. We covered that on video 4. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these rock layers. Petrified tree connecting a bunch of layers can't be millions of years difference in the age of those layers. One in Cookeville, Tennessee, not far from here. The bottom is coalified, the center is petrified, the top is coalified again. Runs through 2 coal seams. Cover more on that on video 6 about coal formation. Mount St. Helens blew trees into Spirit Lake. They're going to petrify very quickly, standing up. That's the way they sank to the bottom. They got waterlogged. Wood petrifies quickly. Here's petrified firewood. Here's a petrified fish giving birth. It does not take millions of years to give birth. Petrified cowboy boot with the cowboy's legs still in it. The article's on the table down here called the Limestone Cowboy. The Mississippi River is depositing sediments at the rate of 80,000 tons every hour. 80,000 tons of mud comes down and dumps off around New Orleans, and that delta is growing larger and larger. They studied the delta pretty carefully and say it probably took about 30,000 years to put all that mud out there in the delta. Okay, well then I have a question. If the earth is millions of years old, why isn't the whole Gulf of Mexico full of mud by now? They'll say, Hovind, it's 30,000 years. That proves the Bible's wrong. The Bible says 6,000. I know, but see, I've got a theory about that. Here's my theory. I believe 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. As the flood water was running off, whoosh, about half of that mud washed out there in 20 minutes. So it looks like it took 30,000 years to get the mud out there. It took about 20 minutes. And then 4,400 years since then, okay? A friend of mine from Louisiana is a pastor of a church. He said, Brother Hovind, I used to work in the oil field, drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, drilling for oil. He said, we drilled down through 14,000 feet of mud and hit trees 60 feet tall, standing up. 60-foot vertical trees under 14,000 feet of mud. More about that on video 6. Here's a picture of the oldest tree on the planet. It's called the bristlecone pine. We've got a piece of bristlecone in our museum in Pensacola. It's only 30 inches in diameter, and it's 700 years old. You can count the rings with a magnifying glass. It grows real slow. Now, tree ring dating is not an exact science. Trees can produce 2 rings a year or 3 rings a year, okay? And be very careful about tree ring dating with overlapping sequencing. We cover more on that during Q&A time if you'd like. But the oldest tree in the world, this textbook says, is 4,300 years old. Earth's oldest organism. That's a pretty old tree. But I've got a question. If the earth is millions of years old, why don't we have an older tree someplace? Why would the oldest tree be 4,300 years old? I have a theory about that. Now here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God made everything, and 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. And so I predict the oldest tree ought to be somewhere around 4,300 years old. It is. Wow. Maybe that Bible's right, you know? Maybe you ought to read that thing and believe it. Here's a picture of a coral reef. You know, the largest reef in the world's in Australia. I had a call from a church in Brisbane one time. They said, do you want to come preach over here in Australia? I said, I need to pray about this. He said, yes. I took my whole family over to Australia. My daughter and I got to go scuba diving at the Great Barrier Reef. It was incredible. Some of the reef was destroyed during World War II by ships and anchors and bombs and stuff like that. So the environmentalist wackos went out there to see how fast it grows back. They watched the reef grow for 20 years. It was a government project. After watching it grow for 20 years, they said the reef is less than 4,200 years old. Okay, well then I have a question. If the earth is millions of years old, why don't we have a bigger reef someplace? Why on earth would the biggest reef be only 4,200 years old? I have a theory about that. I bet you know what it is, don't you? Can you figure it out by now? Okay. Here's a picture of Niagara Falls. The textbook says, boys and girls, the rocky ledge above Niagara Falls has been eroding for nearly 9,900 years. Now, how do they know that? Well, the rocks are breaking off the edge. I mean, all waterfalls do that. They break rocks off, and the waterfall eats its way backwards, okay? Flows one direction, erodes the other direction. Niagara Falls is moving back 4.7 feet a year. Charles Lyell went there in 1841 and said, well, Niagara Falls is here. Obviously, it started up here at the cliff by Lewiston, New York. It's moving back down the gully. He said it's 10,000 years old worth of erosion. The people that lived there said, Charlie, it erodes a whole lot faster than you think. One good rainstorm and there's a whole lot of erosion takes place. He figured 3 feet a year, purposely to make the Bible look wrong. He hated the Bible. We'll get into more of him on video number 4. Today, Niagara Falls is way back there, split over that island. There's actually 2 Niagara Falls, the Canadian side and the American side. It's eroded back quite a ways just since Charles Lyell's time. The textbook says this gorge that the river runs in, is 7.5 miles long. A simple calculation shows it's been 9,900 years. Oh, it's not that simple. See, Niagara Falls is right here. It started off further north up by Lewiston. If the earth is millions of years old, why hasn't it eroded back to Lake Erie by now? Why is Niagara Falls right there? I have a theory about that, okay? Now here's my theory. You see, about 6,000 years ago, God made everything, and 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. As the flood water was running off, whoosh, about half of that creek washed out in 20 minutes. So it looks like it took 9,900 years. They forgot the flood. They also forgot to get the right number. It should have been 8,400 had they used 4.7, but you know, what do you expect? Okay. When it rains, 30% of the water runs into the ocean, bringing with it mineral salts. The oceans are getting saltier every day. Today, they're 3.6% salt. They could have done that in less than 5,000 years. Question, why aren't the oceans saltier? Well, you see, 6,000 years ago, God made everything. 4,400 years ago, there's a flood. Now, since the flood's been over, the oceans have gradually gotten saltier. One atheist I debated said, Hovind, would you please tell me how the freshwater fish survived the flood? I said, sir, aren't you assuming the flood was salt water? He said, the ocean is salt water. I said, well, it is today, yeah. During the flood, it's probably mostly fresh water, and it's gradually gotten saltier, and today some animals have had to adapt to salt water. And now we have freshwater crocodiles and saltwater crocodiles, and they probably had a common ancestor, a crocodile. He said, that's evolution. I said, no, it's not. Going from a freshwater croc to a saltwater croc is a minor change compared to your evolution story. You believe they changed from a rock to a croc. Now, that's a major change, okay? A friend of mine in Alabama raises fish. He said he took a freshwater fish, black mollies, slowly added salt to their aquarium. In 2 weeks, they became saltwater fish. When he put them back in freshwater, they died in 30 minutes. They can adapt to salt water, not a problem. How many have ever gone into a cave and the guide said, don't touch the formations. They take millions of years to form. They all got the same speech, right? You go over here to, what's the one in Kentucky? Mammoth Cave? Or go to Carlsbad Caverns and they say it took 250 million years. They did a study on these stalactites and one guy said, you know, the fastest they can grow is 2.5 inches per 1,000 years. That's the maximum growth rate. I don't think so. Here are some 50-inch stalactites growing under the Lincoln Memorial. They did that in 40 years. There's a bat covered up with flowstone before it could even rot. There's 2-inch stalactites growing off a refrigeration shed in Pensacola, Florida. There's a guy in a building in Indiana built just 40 years ago, has huge cave formations in the basement of the building from water leaking through the limestone. There's a mine was shut down in Australia for 55 years. When they opened it back up to check it out, there were huge cave formations in 55 years. There's a pipe that was dripping water for 7 years, made a 13-inch stalactite. I thought it was 2.5 inches per 1,000 years. It's more like 2 inches per year. They broke off the stalagmite that was under it and gave it to me. It's in my museum. There's a parking garage built in 1997 in Texas. It was making stalagmites on the students' cars parking under it. They had to put up a drip pan to catch the water. A guy in Wyoming had a hot mineral spring on his property in Thermopolis, Wyoming. So he stuck a pipe in the ground. The water came out the top of the pipe and bubbled out the side of the top of the pipe, you know. But it had a little fountain. They called it the teepee fountain. Well, the guy died. They left the pipe sticking in the yard. As the pipe was there, it left behind mineral deposits as the water evaporated. How many have seen these mineral deposits? You get them on your sink up here? Okay. The guy died, and about 95 years after he died, after the pipe was stuck in the ground, I went to see it. Here it is, back in 1998. That would take some lime away to scrub that thing clean, don't you think? Yeah, a little bit. The guy down the street started his later. It's not quite as big, you know. But, you know, at the current rate of erosion, the continents will erode flat in 14 million years. Why do they tell us we've got fossils that are 300 times older than that, still above sea level? They should have washed out to sea 300 times. All you got to do is fly out west and look at the erosion patterns and say, man, this place was destroyed by a flood. I mean, the whole world was destroyed by a flood. Just fly around like I do and look out the window once in a while. The oldest languages in the world are kind of interesting. Origin of major writing systems from National Geographic. What do they say? Well, they say the oldest writing systems in the world started about 3000 BC. 5,000 years ago. Oldest writing systems. And the oldest languages are modern, sophisticated, and complete. The Chinese said the year 2000 was the year 4700. They think they started their calendar with the flood. They called Noah Fuhai. The oldest recorded capital punishment, 3,800 years ago. The Hebrew calendar said the year 2000 was 5760. We know the Hebrew calendar is messed up because a rabbi purposely took some years out to make it not match the prophecy to fit Jesus. The Saxons had a genealogy going back to Adam. The Danes and Norwegians had a king list going back to Noah. Don't trust the Egyptian king list. That is greatly exaggerated. See the work by Corville on that and Evolution Cruncher. Why are the oldest reliable historical records less than 6,000 years old? Well, I have a theory about that. I bet you know what it is, don't you? Yeah. That Bible is absolutely right, folks. Absolutely correct, scientifically. The evidence for a young earth is overwhelming. The students aren't taught that. Students are only shown the evidence for an old earth. Remember the coins in the box? They better deal with the youngest ones, not the oldest ones. These books aren't really science books anymore. They're books about evolution. I think it's part of a much bigger picture for a new world order.
Is man write the Bible? It's not no force out there write the Bible. It's not no force out there write the Bible. It's not no force out there write the Bible.
This is a lie. The truth is the force is the Spirit of God that works with man to write the truth, i.e. the Bible. Notice how he stops himself from saying spirit.
It's not no force out there write the Bible. Just like how you have an artist write a song. He's inspired by his inner understanding and his inner being. He write a song.
Notice there is no Jah inspiration. It's all about inner. This means that you're making yourself to be God.
The Bible was written by men like me and you. It was written like a man did have more powers than this and it's like you want to accept theme word rather than accept a Bob Marley or a Lucian and all them something there.
Well, that don't really make no sense, because for a start, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John were directly in contact with Yeshua.
It's time for wake up, because these stories was written so long ago.
Okay, so now he's saying because the Bible's old, we shouldn't listen to it.
That's a holy pipe though relevant right now. When a man tell about washing the blood of the lamb, what the hell am talking about?
The blood of the lamb refers to Yeshua dying on the cross for our sins.
And I put it to you, these holy stories that are just pushed up on us, not helping at all.
So there you have it, Mutabaruka, totally anti-Bible, anti-Christ.
They get us to feel that when you pray, there's someone or something out there waiting for you to be answered.
Again, what Muta is trying to say, that there is no God to pray to, there is no one to hear our prayers, and we have to sort out everything ourselves. After all, in his ideology, we are all gods. This is totally Antichrist. You will also notice that Mutabaruka wears this Antichrist symbol, the Ankh. This has nothing to do with Rastafari. Haile Selassie did not use or wear this symbol. This symbol is evil and satanic, and possibly even a gateway for evil spirits to come through. The energy that comes from this symbol makes me feel physically sick. This sign is used by the enemy of Jah, including reptilian beings. This is a picture of Haile Selassie when he was a youth. The cross around his neck is not an Ankh. Look at the difference. This is the only picture you will find Haile Selassie wearing something similar to the Ankh. But it is not an Ankh, it is a cross with a circle hoop at the top. Rastafari people wear the cross or the Meskel to represent the power of life after death through Yahushua, the sacrificed lamb.
Jah guide me, Jah bless me, Jah guide me, protect me, Jah guide me, Jah bless, Jah bless, Jah bless, Jah bless.